What is one thing about the world that surprises you?
It surprises me how many people care about parochial interests. I guess intellectually, I understand why that shouldn't be surprising. But just the idea that somehow your city or your part of the town or your school or your college is exceptional just surprises me. Like I'm surprised by people who get into arguments or fights or like about what to me is trivial things, like who happened to win a college game from a college that you went 20 years ago. Yeah.
What is one thing about the world that surprises you?
What is one thing about the world that surprises me? You know, one thing that I've been amazed by for a while is how many kinds of crabs there are in different kinds of places. I don't know if you watch the Planet Earth, specials, but like they had one where they were covering crabs. And there's crabs that are like in little flowers that will grow in little flowers, like little ones that are on the ground in forests and stuff, in addition to like water and stuff. And then, yeah, I didn't know how many kinds of crabs there were. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. So,
yeah, that's it. That's all that's one thing.
Crabs, yeah. What is one thing about the world that surprises you?
That life on a grand scale, on a societal scale, on the scale of civilization, seems to get better over the long term. It seems that life over the long haul, on a sufficiently large scale, gets better. This has been documented many times. Recently in Steven Pinker's books, like The Better Angels of Our Nature and Enlightenment Now. And the evidence is overwhelming. At least to me, it's overwhelming. It's clear that there is a trend that on the whole, on a large scale, on long time scales, life gets better. Nowadays, even people who are lower middle class have things that 100 years ago would have been considered not just luxuries, but magic. I mean, we routinely deploy capabilities that 100 years ago would have been regarded as magic. And that's just amazing. And our lifespans, life expectancy, health, it's just amazing. So life gets better. It gets better in part due to technological innovation. It seems to be a property of the world, and it seems very important. And to me, it's still a bit mysterious. I think to some extent, analytically, I understand it. I can trace it to some causal factors. But it still feels like maybe it didn't have to be this way. It is the way our world seems to be configured, but I can imagine think, I can imagine other worlds, and we could have been living in one of those other worlds. And so it is very pleasantly surprising and still a little bit mysterious to me, to some extent, that life does get better.
What is one thing about the world that surprises you?
About the world?
Mhm.
Wow, that can get really deep, I guess. Okay, it can be not very deep. Like, I find it surprising that it's a sphere. It could be flat, as
Yeah.
but not a sphere.
Yeah.
But as a scientist, I guess that what is surprising about the world is that it's explainable to some degree. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Yeah.
That it can create the brains that kind of understand what it is about. It's just too strange. It's too strange.
Yeah. What is one thing about the world that surprises you?
Something about the world that surprises me?
Mhm.
That it doesn't go wrong more often than it does, in the sense that like somebody could go postal and kill everyone around, and not that many people do that, actually. I mean, people say there's so many mass murders, but I mean, there could be one mass murder, like 10 a day or something, and it doesn't happen. It's like people, they're super frustrated, but they don't go around driving their cars into others. And often, like, there's this kind of still, like, remaining faith in institutions and the general order of the world that things kind of work. And I always find that super surprising. So when like a long time ago, I worked at the police as part of my, when I went the engineering school I went to, École Polytechnique, you do a military service. Instead of doing military service, I did police service. So for a year, I was a police officer, like
Wow.
with the uniform and everything. And I had a gun and a loaded that I was carrying. And so I was in the subway and I had this gun and it has all these things, and I had this fitted coat because I didn't really know how to be a cop, right? So I had this fitted coat, so the gun was like sticking out like this. And nobody has gun in Paris. I was taking the subway and people were watching at me. I was like, sorry. And I was like trying to hide my gun. So it was really funny. And I was thinking, I could go mental and kill everyone in the subway car. Not that I wanted to do this, but I'm thinking, how are they trusting me with a gun and all the others, and we don't kill people? So in a way, I'm surprised that people are, given that there's so many crazy people around, because there are, I'm surprised that they don't do more really, really damaging stuff like that. More or less society works. Of course, we know about all the issues with global warming and all the insecurity around and all the unacceptable violence. But what I'm thinking is, it's great that we find that unacceptable.
Mhm.
But if I had to guess and I had never seen the world, I would expect it to be like much, much more higher, to be much more of a jungle. So
Yeah.
more or less kind of things kind of work okay, and I'm very
Yeah.
surprised by that.
Yeah, makes sense. What is one thing about the world that surprises you?
The world which surprises me. I think it's the world now. Because if you look at history, back in 1991, there was somebody who wrote a book called The End of History. And there was this expectation that, yes, now it's all smooth and we'll just steadily get more prosperous and life will just get better for people and so on and so forth. So it was essentially going to become boring. and so it does... I'm actually super surprised by how much the world has changed in that respect. So the surprising thing to me is 2020.
It's not boring.
It's not boring.
Yeah.
I mean, where were we in January 1, 2020, and where are we going to be on January 1, 2021?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's if you want to think about connected to science, I think the thing which it tells us is that there are long tails in any phenomena, right? So we always use these models of Gaussians, but in Gaussians, low probability events don't occur. As you go out into the tails, the probability is just disappear.
Yeah.
Okay, whereas the world we live in actually has long tails.
Hmm.
Okay, so I mean, some people use the term black swan events. So black swan events are these rare events, but if you integrate over all of them, they are quite likely.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2020, we have had like 4 black swan events. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is what is, I think, in a way, it's a surprising thing that, I mean, by definition, every black swan event is surprising,
Mm-hmm.
but at one level, it is not surprising.
Right.
I mean, that there will be these surprising events.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. What is one thing about the world that surprises you?
Well, I mean, and these are the nice surprises of being a parent. Like whenever we see our kids kind of growing up, and then there's like these like little moments of like, oh, something happened. Like there's something about your kid that has semantically, meaningfully changed. And when you start seeing like a little personality trait that is appearing and that starts becoming them, and how that emerges, I think it's still like, I'm just describing, the mystery of intelligence. So in some way it's not, we know it's a big mystery, but just seeing it like with your own kids is like, I still get surprised when I guess our youngest, like you can see now she's at an age where like that personality is coming through. And so it's a surprise because you don't really know what they'll turn out to be. And the fact they're all different, I don't know, that's kind of like really neat. And each time it's like a surprise to see how different they'll be.
Yeah. What is one thing about the world that surprises you?
The world at large?
Yeah.
I mean, I think these days, these have been really difficult times, and I guess I'm an optimist at heart, and so I'm surprised by how many people are not willing to, to sort of take actions towards the collective good when we have pretty clear signal that, whether it's wearing masks or social distancing or some of, decisions with respect to the environment, that it's so hard for some people to make decisions that, at least to me, seem like they're necessary for the collective good.
Yeah. Yeah. What is something about the world that surprises you?
Well, life surprises me. It's such an obvious question, but how is it that life is inevitable? Why isn't it? I don't know. Like, why don't we find it other places than Earth yet? And it's so stubborn and resilient here, and yet it doesn't seem to show up other places yet. Anyway, that's kind of a puzzle.
Yeah. What is something about the world that surprises you?
I don't think there is anything too surprising. But like, if I just talk about research, it does feel a bit odd to me that if the goal of like all of us is to solve AI, AGI, why can't we just like collaborate and do it all together? Why do we do like flag planting and like run after like publishing papers? I do understand there is benefit to competition, like it leads to diversity of ideas, but I'm not sure if we are at the right mix between like collaboration and competition. It feels like it's more competitive than collaborative. So, yeah.
Yeah. What is something about the world that surprises you?
I think what surprises me nowadays is that so I always believe in people. I believe that people want to do right, and they may not necessarily have been given the chance to do what's right. Now I am actually, in some cases, I'm much more hopeful about people, and in other cases, I'm much more pessimistic about people.
What is something about the world that surprises you?
the world, how resilient some people are, I think, is just amazing to me. Like how, how some people can keep their mental state intact. Like, I don't, like, there's people in the Black Panther Party who were in solitary confinement for like 50 years.
Oh.
And then they were like put out into the world. And they were still like working with their communities, trying to, so I don't understand how a person can live, be in prison for 50 years in solitary confinement and still continue to like stay alive. That's just something I don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think humans' ability to be resilient is something pretty amazing.
Yeah. What is something about the world that surprises you?
Like what about the world? Like
Just anything, really. That's something that maybe is true and you're really surprised it's true, or something that happens a lot and you can't, like, you're very surprised why it happens so much, or anything.
Well, I think that one thing that was kind of surprising is the extent to which, and this, I guess, the extent to which like the information age has caused people to become very siloed, that there are many different ways that you can get information. And the net result is not really that people have more information, but that they have different information, and that it leads to a lot of division. So I think I didn't anticipate that.
Yeah. What is something about the world that surprises you?
Well, honestly, looking at the current political and social issues, what surprises me is the lack of critical thinking, right? Like how quickly people are drawn to emotional speeches and words. And maybe this is because I relate to it differently. I have this inability to process emotions of other people so readily. Like it's something more kind of I've developed over time. So in a way, it kind of, right, feels so like, okay, what is this guy saying that's so amazing to these people that they won't like stop to ask any facts, like they won't even check. I mean, like this can go on the internet, but again, on the internet, right, if they're only looking at polarized sources that are not truthful, they're so caught up in that. I think this cognitive bias, the stereotyping, the implicit bias and explicit bias, like how people form opinions and don't learn and update them. That to me is so surprising. I really hope we can find a way to make everyone always question and think, right? So, of course, day-to-day life would be just not possible unless you have some beliefs, but to have enough of an open mind to update it. New knowledge, because I also listen to the other side, right? Like I listen to some sources that are bad, that are really disturbing to read, but I do that to try to understand, okay, how are they trying to make this argument, and why is this so compelling to a group of people? So I think we need to, and I'm reading more into psychology, like in literatures in psychology, on how beliefs are formed and how right, people process them. I think there's more for us to think about this as we grapple with such global issues in terms of misinformation and polarization.
Yeah. What is one thing about the world that surprises you?
I think the fact that it's at all explainable is somewhat surprising to me. I think we're great as humans at being able to rationalize things, but the fact that our models have, some level of predictive value, whether they're explicit or kind of implicit, but it's a very interesting phenomenon to me. It's like that the world is so complex, but in many ways, it's actually quite comprehensible. And maybe it's that way from an anthropological kind of perspective, that maybe the conditions needed in our part of the universe need to be at that point where there's enough complexity but not such unpredictability. But it is still a surprising fact to me.
Yeah. What is something about the world that surprises you?
I think one thing I've learned in traveling around and living in different places is that you can always find amazing things about any place. Like, not everything about a particular place is perfect, but like you can always find that there's something about any place that is unique and different and you really enjoy.
Yeah. What is something about the world that surprises you?
What was that? A word?
About the world, just world or life, or yeah.
Yeah. So I don't really get the society of United States in the sense that kind of like why people don't like, for example, believe this climate change, or the in this, for example, in this specific example, why people don't wear masks, where the people think that it's violation of their rights. Because I mean, in Taiwan, it's normal. It's kind of the cultural norm is very simple. That kind of if you and then the public official tells you that if you wear a mask, everyone will be safe. And if you go to Taiwan, even now, there's zero case for like 100 days already. You still, if you go out and when people gather, still wear masks, everyone. I feel that the concept, I don't know, maybe in the Western society, they have more concept about their self, but they don't have like we as a society to do the right things. So that's something that I'm a bit puzzled. I think I understand that, for example, for some politician, like the president, he wants to do this. He wants to promote this kind of more dangerous actions. That I think is fine, but that's his personal things. But what I'm surprised that is the population that endorsed that message. That's something that's still puzzling. Like, what is so difficult to put on your mask? It's just a little bit inconvenient, but it saved other people's lives. Yeah, so that's one of the surprise things for me, that I couldn't really understand why people think that way.
Yeah.
Maybe this is something probably due to the maybe long tradition of this, like maybe has history of that, similar to gun. I mean, you want to drive, you need to take a test, you need to have this, make sure that you can drive well, you can have this thing. But for guns, why don't have any check and balance? You don't have to check. And why in the society we need AR-15? So it's so divided. I think that something that these are the things that I couldn't really understand about especially US.
Yeah.